these companies have organizations called taste institutes where they hire craving experts and they design their products in a specific way to create the bliss point of the food. What is that? Perfect crunch, taste, sugar, whatever it is, salt. And it's about dopamine. It's like heroin or cocaine. One of the top executives from one of the big soda companies said to me, Mark, you want to come to our lab and see what we've done? We've actually been able to extract the taste buds from humans and we grow them in a culture in the lab and then we can stimulate them and see what's happening. I'm like, you do not want me to go in there.
Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose. I'm so glad you come back every single week to listen, learn, and grow. And today I'm super excited to be interviewing a guest that I actually had on Instagram Live a few months ago. And we weren't able to dive in even as deep as I wanted to in that Instagram Live, which was amazing. So I thought, why not bring him onto the podcast where I can really quiz him on the things that I'm interested about, the things that I know, insights that will really help you, and of course, get to know each other better. So today's guest is none other than Dr. Mark Hyman. He's a practicing family physician and an internationally recognized leader, speaker, educator, and advocate in the field of functional medicine. He's the founder and director of the Ultra Wellness Center, the head of strategy and innovation of the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine, a 13-time New York Times best-selling author, and board president for clinical affairs for the Institute for Functional Medicine. Now, he's the host of one of the leading health podcasts, The Doctor's Pharmacy. Highly recommend listening to it and checking it out. Dr. Hyman is a regular medical contributor to several TV shows and networks, including CBS, This Morning, Today, Good Morning America, The View, and CNN. He's also an advisor and guest co-host on the Dr. Oz Show. This is an episode I'm so excited about where we will dive deep into how to save our health, our economy, our communities, and our planet one bite at a time with a discussion about his latest book, Food Fix. Welcome to the show, Mark Hyman.
Thank you so much. That was so sweet. Thank you, Jay. So fun to be with you.
It's so fun to be with you. I loved our Instagram Live. We were just sharing. We did that just before lockdown and the pandemic and everything kind of shifted. And I'm remembering back to doing it with you. And I loved it so much. And I'm so glad we're actually getting to spend this quality time together now and really dive into this great book you've written.
Thank you. Thank you. It was really the culmination of a life's work to connect the dots between everything we love and care about and how they're connected in ways that we don't imagine, but that if we actually solve the problem of food, we solve the problems of chronic disease, of the stress in our economy, of the disintegration of our communities, of racism, of environmental destruction, climate change, national security, kids' education. I mean, all of it's connected to food. And it's really such a joy to be able to share how those things are connected and actually what we can do about it. Because it's not called food apocalypse, it's called food fix.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I can't wait to dive into all areas of that with you because I think we don't realize how powerful and influential food is, not just in our bodies, not just in our minds, but in the world. And I know that inside this book, you've gone into so many studies and so much research to really show the impact of food in the world. But I actually want to start somewhat a bit more personal with you because I was discovering some fascinating things about you. And this was one that I loved, that I feel there's no better way to start this interview than letting our audience know that you were a yoga teacher before you were a doctor.
That is true. I mean,
that fascinated me. When I was like, wow, that's cool.
I majored in Buddhism and Asian studies and Asian religions in college. And I wasn't going to be a doctor. I was going to be a monk.
I remember.
And I actually decided, well, I'm not sure I want to be a monk. Maybe I'll just try to be a doctor and be of service in that way. And it was really driven out of the notion of compassion and service that was so embedded in Buddhism. And I learned about in college. So and I then became a yoga teacher and decided to become a doctor after that. So it was an afterthought, but I'm still working at it.
I love that. Well, when we get onto that, it means you're thinking like a monk for sure. So I love that. But tell me about how you think that, tell me a bit more about that compassion piece that you were sharing there, because I think it's really interesting that, people get involved in medicine for so many reasons. People get involved in being authors for so many reasons, but it sounds like your kind of foundation was wanting to help people, wanting to make a difference.
Yeah.
That was the
I mean, I think, when I really studied Buddhism, I was obviously looking for answers as a young man of 18, 19 years old, and what's the truth and what's the meaning of life. And in it, I realized it was a description of how to heal suffering. And the focus of Buddhism isn't a religion, it's a methodology for healing and relieving suffering and understanding the way our minds work that cause us to suffer so much. And I began to really focus on this notion of how we don't have to suffer and why we suffer. And it was really that led me to understanding that I could actually be in that space of service and working on healing through not just, being a monk, but actually being a doctor and actually helping patients and people understand how to heal chronic disease, which is what I do. And so I think, there's so much suffering in the world. There's so much burden that everybody suffers from, both psychologically, physically, in so many different ways. And I was really drawn to doing something to help deal with that. And that's really what led me to becoming a doctor.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's a really unique way of looking at it, because I think for so many of us, sometimes we can be dealing with physical or emotional pain or issues for such a long time before we even think that there's something we need to do about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are living with chronic issues for such a long time, and we don't really listen or hear from the body or from the mind what we need to change. So when you look at it that way, that you can change what suffering you choose and what you allow in, it's huge. Tell me one more thing. Sorry, go on. You were going to say something.
No, I'm just saying, what's your mission in life? It's really to end needless suffering. There's some suffering you can't avoid, but there is a lot of needless suffering. And the place where I feel most effective is really helping people understand that they can heal from chronic disease using a new strategy, which is functional medicine. It's really an approach of using food as medicine, but it's understanding the root causes. It's understanding the body as a system. It's really helping restore and regenerate health as opposed to treat disease. And people suffer unnecessarily. And I think this goal for my life has really been to sort of bring this way of thinking and helping people into a broader perspective. And that's really what I do at Cleveland Clinic. We're publishing research on this. It's really gratifying to see that actually that it's catching on, that people now understand what this is, that they understand that our current medical paradigm isn't really solving a lot of their problems. And, I got there because I was sick. I got very, very ill when I was young from chronic fatigue, living in China, got mercury poisoning, and ended up having just, my body just collapsed. And I had to literally reverse engineer my way to health using principles of functional medicine of how to restore my health. And I realized it was applicable to so many patients, people with autoimmune diseases and digestive disorders and mood disorders and Alzheimer's and autism and diabetes and metabolic issues. All the things that people suffer from that we don't really deal well with traditional medicine is what I really focused on. Yeah,
that's incredible. And I love how so much of the good we do always comes from some sort of pain in our own life.
Yeah.
And, it's amazing that you've been able to go and take it so far, and not just take it far, but you're really challenging the status quo. Let's start there. Actually, we're in Food Fix. I doubt people take the time to actually think that the food industry has an agenda of their own. But can you share some ways in which the industry is strategic in how it advances its own goals and missions? I feel like most of us don't expect it.
Oh boy, that's a can of worms. So there are a lot of unintended consequences that have led to our current food system that were born out of good intentions, right? We wanted to feed the world. We wanted to have the ability to grow lots of food for a lot of people and provide a lot of calories at scale and modernize agriculture. And that was happening in the 50s and 60s, which led to this commercialization of industrial agriculture, which led to enormous amounts of starchy industrial food being produced. Right. So we were all enamored with, astronaut food and processed food and Tang instead of orange juice. And unfortunately, that's led to a method of growing food that's produced the worst food on the planet. It's mostly ultra processed food, which is made from soy, corn, and wheat in different extruded colors, sizes, shapes, and forms. It's all deadly, about 60% of our calories. And it's also led to destruction of the environment through destruction of the soil and biodiversity of plants and animals and insects, and also stresses on our water and increasing climate change and all the pollution from the incredible amount of pesticides and herbicides. And we use 6 billion pounds around the world of glyphosate, which is pretty toxic. And we use 400 billion pounds of nitrogen fertilizer, which has all kinds of devastating consequences. So the way we're growing the food and the food that we're growing is devastating our health and devastating planetary health. And so the problem is that the food industry is the biggest industry on the planet. It's trillion with a T dollar industry that is now trying to maintain the status quo, unfortunately, which is not a good one. So it wasn't like they said, oh, we're going to make people sick and fat and we're going to destroy the environment. They just didn't know, but now they know. And so there's a very concerted effort to control our food policy, which is, as a doctor, why would I be caring about politics and food policy? But it occurred to me as I'm sitting in my office seeing patients one-on-one that I can't cure diabetes in my office. It's cured in the kitchen, in the grocery store, on the farm. And I need to sort of look upstream and look at the root causes. And then begin to say, well, what's causing the food that they're eating that's making them sick? Well, it's the food system. What causes the food system? It's our food policies. And why do we have the food policies we have? Because it's a food lobby that drives that. And so they drive a lot of the status quo. And they do it in government policy. And we spend $500 million just on the Farm Bill. In 1 year, in 2005, the GMO labeling law was defeated. Because the food industry collectively spent $192 million on one bill in lobby. And they do this by driving our dietary guidelines policy, our agricultural policies that promote the growth of these raw materials or commodities for ultra-processed food. They do it through controlling what we can say on food labels. They control the restrictions on marketing, so we can't actually limit marketing for junk food. And across the whole multiple 10 agencies of the government, there's so many policies that are influencing our food system that are often at odds with each other, contradictory, but they're in the interest of the food industry. So that's happening. And then they're also co-opting science. So the National Institute of Health spends $1 billion on research for nutrition. The food industry spends $12 billion. Most of it's propaganda, like if the Dairy Council says milk is nature's perfect food, well, all the studies show that. Or Coca-Cola finds that, when they fund a study that obesity has nothing to do with soda, so it doesn't make sense. They also fund groups that are front groups, like the American Council on Science and Health, which sounds like a great noble cause, or Crop Life, or the group for sustainable agriculture, and they're all front groups for the food industry to propagate their agenda and create misinformation. And then they co-opt public health groups, so like the American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association, Academy of Nutrition Dietetics. 40% of their budget is from the food industry, so they're not giving independent advice. And then they co-opt social groups like the NAACP and Hispanic Federation and groups that are doing good in the world. They fund them. For example, I was showing a movie that I was in a number of years called Fed Up, which is about childhood obesity and the problems we have with the food industry and sugar and starch. And I went down there and I met with the head of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, which is Martin Luther King's church, met with his daughter, Bernice King, and they were very excited to get behind this and have a screening at the King Center in Atlanta. And I was excited about this. And a few days later, I got a call and said, we can't have this showing at the King Center. I'm like, why? So, well, Coca-Cola funds the food industry, funds the King Center. So it's pretty frightening when you see all these different strategies to target certain groups, to put out wrong science, to support misinformation through these front groups, through influencing public health groups, through controlling policy. And it's a really devastating effect, which has led to the fact that 6 out of 10 Americans have a chronic disease, that 75% of us are overweight, that 42% are obese, that 88% are metabolically unhealthy. I mean, just take that in for a minute. 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy. That means 88% are not. And these people are at more risk for COVID-19 and other chronic diseases. So we really have this crisis moment here. And I think we need to understand how all these things are related. And then we need to design a strategy to both from a grassroots level, from a business innovation level, from philanthropy, and from clearly policy to change what's happening.
Wow. I mean, that is one news update in a great way. I was with you the whole time. When I hear that, and I think about my community, my audience listening or watching or anyone consuming this right now, it's like it can feel very overwhelming to an individual, for the individual that doesn't have the feeling of just like there's two things that come to mind. One is like, do these people realize that they're actually destroying people's lives? Because, you know, it almost, at the end of the day, it's like you said, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's not like it started that way, but now that people are aware and we continue to fund it in that direction, it may leave people feeling quite helpless. Where is a great place for people to get started? Of course, this book for people to get educated, because I feel like the biggest challenge in making choices when you're like, oh my God, I can't trust the labels. I can't trust the ingredients on the back. Where do people trust? Where do they find trust is really good.
Well, you know, I spent a lot of time when I wrote the book Food Fix to dive into practical solutions, both for individuals, for businesses, policies. And I created a Food Fix action guide. It's free. They can go to foodfixbook.com and download it. Essentially, it gives you 20 of the top things you can do as citizens and individuals to have an impact, to change your health and change society and change planetary health and drive policy and drive businesses. And it works. When we change what we want to do, and we vote with our wallet, we vote with our voice, we vote with our fork, and we vote with our vote, we see massive change. I mean, General Mills and Danone, which are two big food companies, are now funding farmers to convert their lands to regenerative agriculture. So they're literally stepping up and doing what the government isn't doing and funding farmers to transform agriculture to produce nutrient-dense food in a way that restores the soil, restores the plant nutrition, and restores human health. That's groundbreaking, and it's because we can make those choices. So I talk about, how do you become a regenitarian? How do you regenerate your own health, and how do you regenerate planetary health and our social communities and their health? And it's pretty simple, right? It's eating real food. It's not buying into the industrial food that we're all eating, which is hard to do for some people, but I give real clear resources on what to look for, where to buy things that are not necessarily expensive, because people think it's expensive to do this, but it actually can be done really at scale in a way that isn't going to break the bank. You have to become a smart consumer. You have to read food labels. You have to seek out different sources of food, whether it's community-supported agriculture or farmers markets or online retailers that sell direct to consumer, like Thrive Market or Mariposa Ranch, which actually sell regeneratively raised beef and other animal foods that are really healthy for you. And there's things you can do if you get inspired in your own community. You can be an agent of change, right? Maybe you want to get your local government to start a compost ordinance, so you'll compost your food, because food waste is a huge problem. Like 40% of our food is wasted, and it's one of the biggest drivers of climate change. It's a bigger contributor of methane than cows. And it's all your vegetables you're throwing in the compost. In the landfill. And you can actually start to understand how to do these things for yourself. You maybe have a compost pile in your group. If you want to become an activist, you can turn up the heat on your politicians and food companies by finding organizations that are doing it and supporting them, or lobbying your representatives. I mean, you can actually have an impact locally, and you can decide maybe you want to work in your school and help the school lunch and nutrition be better. And people have done that. And so in the book is just full of examples of actually how to take control of your own health and your own life and your own community. And it's working. I mean, it's why we're seeing the changes we're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for creating that action guide, everyone. That's foodfixbook.com if you want to go and grab that, because I think that's what people are looking for. I really believe that people are looking for action guides because that's where they know they need to start. And one of the things that I'm fascinated by when I was looking at the book, and I've been looking at your work, you talk about how I think it's like the average child between something like 2 and 13 or 14, you say, like sees on average like 10 to 11 junk food ads per day on TV.
It's terrible. I mean, the average kid sees probably 10,000 ads a year. Yeah. And that's television. Now we're seeing stealth advertising. So a lot of these studies were done on food marketing to kids. There's about $17 billion spent in 2004 when it was tracked on junk food advertising to kids. And the worse the food, the more the ads and the worse the ads were. So, and now Facebook, for example, last year had, 500 billion ads for junk food on Facebook, right? It's just unbelievable how much. And there's stealth games for kids, like advert games, where they're literally embedded propaganda for food companies. So little McDonald's, go to the McDonald's store and go to, get your Burger King, whatever. It's terrifying. So we see the biggest impact actually is this changes in food marketing. And in this country, there's the First Amendment. You can't restrict people's right to free speech. And but I don't think there's any law that prohibits us from protecting our children from these kinds of messages, because they can't tell the difference between reality and an ad until they're about 8 or 9 years old, and they're targeting these kids. And in Chile, when they actually repealed the ability or removed the ability for these companies to market between 6 a.m. and I think 10 p.m., there was dramatic reduction in the use of these foods and dramatic reductions in obesity. But this country doesn't want to do that because it's such a big moneymaker for these companies.
Yeah, that's really alarming, because ultimately the people making the decisions are obviously aware that the food's not healthy for people and it's not going to benefit their body or their mind, but they still continue to invest in, creating challenges for kids. And I always, whenever I get asked randomly to invest or be a spokesperson for different brands or whatever it may be, and whenever it's something that's aimed at young people, I'm always just like, well, how old I always ask them, how old your son or daughter? And they'll tell me their age. And I'll be like, would you recommend them to use this product? And the amount of times I've heard people say, no, I wouldn't. But I'm like, but you're selling this, I'm just so confused by that. Do you think that's the level at which we have to change it? Like, it needs to change on the level where people go, my profitability is not as important as people's children. I
think that's changing. I was really excited to hear, there's this group called the Business Roundtable, which is all the top businesses in America. They get together, the CEOs. And in the last meeting, they made a stand. They said, we have to look not only at shareholder value, but stakeholder value. Meaning, what is the impact of our company on our customers, on the workers, on the environment? Who are the stakeholders in the products we're creating? And it's not just about profit and shareholder value, which I thought was a big step forward. So I think we're seeing more movements towards conscious capitalism, but there's definitely entrenched companies that just don't want to change, and they're not going to do it voluntarily. So there has to be sort of a parallel system that grows up that shows that this can happen. And I think we're doing it. And I want it to happen faster, but I think it's happening.
Yeah, and how much of it is also, and I know you know the answer to this, but it's how much of it also is our addiction and habits because of the way those products have been created. So we also find it hard to let go of them. So I'll give you a personal example. I grew up eating 4 sugar products a day when I was young. And so, 4 chocolate products a day. Sorry, not 4 sugar, 4 chocolate products a day. And so I would eat a chocolate biscuit, a chocolate bar, a chocolate ice cream, and a chocolate yogurt nearly every single day of my life. And I was overweight as a child. I struggled with it, whether it was bullying or whether it was just feeling unhealthy. And as I grew older, I started to realize that I was addicted to sugar, especially in chocolate. And I got so used to having it. And it took me to, who I've talked to you about before, meeting my wife, who was able to find me alternatives. Because that's what I said to my wife. I was like, I need an alternative if I'm going to have to shake this habit.
Yeah.
And so I ended up finding things sweetened with monk fruit and other things, which have been amazing. But
that's good for you, monk fruit, right?
I know, how ironic. I do not own the brand or have any affiliation with it whatsoever. but the intriguing thing to me about that is that there are alternatives that exist. But I want to share this for the audience. It's like, I get what it feels like to be addicted to a food that may not be good for you. But tell us about how much we're addicted to these foods.
Yeah, I mean, this is a real problem, Jay, and I think most people don't realize it. And they internalize the feelings they have about what they eat and blame themselves. So, oh, why can't I stop eating this? Oh, I'm gaining weight and I just can't stop myself. And they think it's their fault that they're overweight or that they're sick. And that is just a bunch of nonsense, and scientific nonsense, because when you look at the science of these foods, these ultra processed pulverized foods that are high in starch and sugar, they're really designed to hijack our brain chemistry, our hormones, and our metabolism in a very specific way. And these companies have organizations called taste institutes, where they hire craving experts in the science of craving, and they design their products in a specific way to create the bliss point of the food. What is that perfect crunch, taste, sugar, whatever it is, salt, that's going to make you go boom and have this pleasure sensation. And it's about dopamine. It's like heroin or cocaine, and it works in the same area of the brain. And it's not just a theory. They know this. Of course, they deny it. Although one of the top executives from one of the big soda companies said to me, "Mark, you want to come to our lab and see what we've done? We've actually been able to extract the taste buds from humans, and we grow them in a culture in the lab, and then we can stimulate them and see what's happening." I'm like, you do not want me to go in there, because I'll put this all over social media. and it's a very scary thing. And so the science has shown, for example, that if you take a group of overweight guys and one day you give them a milkshake that's a regular milkshake, and the next day you give them a trick milkshake, which is exactly the same except for the way in which the sugar is absorbed. So there's starch, and there's the same carbohydrate, the same protein, the same fat, the same fiber, the same calories. So exactly the same, and they taste the same. So they don't know what they're drinking. When they found that when they had the one that had the sugar that was absorbed quickly compared to the one that's absorbed slowly, it created this pattern in their brain that lit up the same area called the nucleus accumbens as heroin or cocaine. And you could see it on a functional MRI. So this is not just a theory that, oh, it's maybe addictive. It's not really a true addiction. It actually is. And when they looked at their other biomarkers, their blood levels of insulin, sugar, adrenaline, cortisol, stress hormones, you literally eat sugar, your stress hormones go up. So you can be meditating all day, but if you're eating sugar all day, you're in trouble. And I think we don't understand how powerful these foods are and how they hijack our biology. But within a very short time, literally just 10 days or less, you literally can reset your biology, reset your brain chemistry, reset your hormones and your taste buds, and get out of it. And I remember I ran this course once in a Kripalu, which is a yoga center near me.
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah. And it was sort of a sugar detox. And this woman came in, she's like, "There's no way I can do this. I've been addicted to sugar my whole life. I'm never going to be able to get off this." I said, "Just do exactly what I'm saying and just try to do this and eat in a way that's going to reset your biology, because food is medicine." And she's like, "Okay, I'll try it." Well, day 2, she's like, "I can't believe it. I don't have any more cravings. I don't want it. I don't need it." It's like my whole biology has changed. So I think people can be very empowered by making those kinds of changes.
And does it, just to dive into that slightly, a tiny bit more, should that change for people be extreme, or is it incremental? So it's like, let's say someone's listening, they are consuming too much sugar, or they're having too many sodas or whatever. Is it like they should go the next day, no sodas? What's that? Almost that 10-day program. What
yeah. So do you have like 1 ounce less of soda a day, or 12 sodas is 11? Okay. Yeah. I think as a doctor, I want people to be able to have the experience of health. It's like an awakening. I want them to actually quickly be able to experience that. So I usually can convince people to do a dramatic change for a short time, like a week or 10 days. And then their bodies tell them how they feel. They go, "Oh my God, my migraines are gone. My digestion's better. I'm sleeping better. My sinus drip is gone. My skin's clearing up. My acne's gone. I feel better. I don't have cravings. My energy's good." And they go, "Well, wow, I'm getting the connection between what I eat and how I feel." Yeah. And so I always love to give people that experience. And I created a program called the 10-Day Reset. And it's essentially giving them that opportunity. You can download it free at getpharmacy.com. It's just a simple way of eating in a specific time frame, in a specific way that's going to really regulate your biology. Because every bite of food you take regulates your entire biology. It changes your gene expression. It changes your hormones, your brain chemistry, your immune system, your microbiome, everything. Literally with every bite. And when you understand that, and you can upgrade or downgrade your biology literally with every bite, your biological software can change. You can really see rapid changes. And we've seen incredible things from people, getting off insulin in 3 days, for example. So it's really powerful when people make the choice to try this. And I think, tiny steps and tiny habit changes are good. And BJ Fogg talks about this for some things. But I think if you really want to see the power of this, a short-term dramatic change can give you enormous benefit.
I'm completely with you on that. I think that when you experience something immersively in an extreme way, you're more likely to quickly feel the benefits of it and to recognize it's powerful. Now, that may mean you may go back to your old habit quicker, but you now know what you're trying to move towards, as opposed to not having a tangible experience. So I'm perfectly with you. I wanted to check that with an expert. that definitely, I can totally relate to that. Tell me about, you talk a lot about in the book, and what I'm really trying to do for anyone who's listening or watching right now is, the book is just full, and you can already tell Dr. Mark Hyman is a phenomenal storyteller. He's got a ton of great studies that, I'm massively into studies. And so every time I look these studies, I'm like, I get really fascinated, intrigued. The book is full of the insights, the tools and the actions that you can take in each of these areas. But I do believe that the first step is education and awareness. So I'm hoping that as you're listening to this, the podcast is going to give you the insight about each of these areas of our life that food impacts. But when you read the book, that's going to give you the full set of, what part of it you need to change and where the action is. So what I'm fascinated by in the book is you talk a lot about how there's food racism. Yeah. And I think that this is so obviously relevant right now. Yeah. And so important for people to understand, because I think either we don't believe it exists or we're so consumed by it that we're not conscious of it. Explain that concept to us.
Well, I mean, I think, we have certain populations in this country that are so disproportionately affected by chronic disease and by poor health. The African-American community, Hispanic community, Native American communities. And when you look at COVID-19, it is far and away hurting these populations more than anybody else. For example, in Louisiana and Chicago, African-Americans are 30% of the population, but 70% of the deaths. Native Americans are experiencing the same thing. And if you're African-American in America, you have twice the rate of getting diabetes. You have probably 4 times the rate of getting kidney failure and 3.5 times likely to get amputations because of diabetes. And you're targeted more than the rest of the population. The food marketing is often more directed to minorities. And we see this. This is from Yale's studies that have shown that we actually are targeting these populations more. So these health disparities are huge. And there are a lot of reasons for it. I mean, there's what we call it structural violence. We talk about structural racism, but there's a bigger concept, which is what are the structural violence, the social, economic, political conditions, environmental conditions that are driving disease. Right? We see this with whether infectious disease or chronic disease. And this is what we have in America. We have this structural violence that has led to incredible amounts of disease in these populations. It's leading to these health disparities. And we have to understand why. And the reasons are complex, right? There's the racism issues and the segregation we had and the lack of access to education and housing and opportunity and funding. And there's a lot of issues. But the problem with food is that it drives these populations to be more sick, less able to learn in school, less able to succeed in life, and more likely to get disability and chronic disease as they get older. So we see this sort of dismantling of these populations in scale in ways that we don't see in other populations. And it's really heartbreaking because it's so fixable. And I've seen this happen. I went down, and even if you're poor and you're white, a lot of these things are still evident. And as part of that movie, Fed Up, I went down to this little town in Easley, South Carolina. There was a family of 5 living in a trailer, food stamps and disability. The father was 42, already on dialysis from kidney failure from diabetes. The mother was like overweight, 200+ pounds. The son was practically diabetic at 16. And I said, listen, I'm not going to lecture you. Let's just cook a meal together. Here's what's in your kitchen. Like, here's all the junk. And I showed him everything that they were eating they thought was fine. Like Cool Whip, which said 0 trans fat, but was all trans fat because the FDA left a loophole that said if you have less than 0.5 gram per serving, you can say no trans fat, but it's all air. So it's just all the food industry influence. And they were like horrified. And then I said, let's cook a meal of turkey chili. Let's create a nice salad with olive oil and vinegar dressing and salt and pepper. Let's stir fry some asparagus. Let's roast some sweet potatoes. Simple meal. It wasn't expensive. And they actually loved it. They never cooked in their kitchen before. And I just gave a little bit of education. I said, here's a guide on how to eat well for less, good food on a tight budget from the Environmental Working Group, and where I'm on the board. And I gave them a cookbook. I said, you can do this. And they did it. And within a year, they lost 200 pounds together. The father was able to lose enough to get a new kidney. The son lost 50, but then went to work at Bojangles, which is a fast food restaurant down in the South. And it's the only place you can get a job for these kids there. And he gained 50 pounds. It was like it's putting an alcoholic to work in a bar. Yeah. And then he figured it out, and he lost 138 pounds. And he got into medical school. He asked me to write a letter of recommendation. So people can actually come out of this if they're given the right education tools. But I've worked in these communities and populations, and they just don't know. They just are unaware of this sort of level of food racism and food even apartheid that's happening in these communities, where you see the lack of ability to access food and lack of ability to find, quality ingredients because they're buying food at the gas station. That's where they get their food.
Yeah, thank you so much for raising awareness about this super important issue, because I feel like it's just not talked about.
No.
Yeah, go on. No, sorry, go on.
It's internalized, like I went on a rafting trip, and I read the story in the book with a Hopi chief, who's a Native American chief, and he lives in one of the oldest inhabited cities in America, Robbie, which has been, somebody's lived in there for over 1,000 years. And he was very, very overweight, and he was just struggling to get down to the raft, and threw up because he just was so out of shape. And we got on the raft, and we kind of got to know each other. I said, you can actually fix this. You can get rid of your diabetes. He said, well, what do I have to do? He said, well, I said, well, you have to get rid of the starch and sugar in your diet, the sodas and the sweets and all that. He's like, wow, well, okay, but what are we going to do for our traditional Hopi ceremonial foods? We have these traditional Hopi ceremonial foods. And I'm like, what foods? He's like, cookies, cakes, pies. And I'm like thinking to myself, those are not your traditional ceremonial foods. And what's happened was that the government put everybody on renovations. They cut off their food supply and their traditional ways of hunting or fishing or even growing food. They diverted, in Hopi, they diverted their water, so they had no access to rivers anymore. And then they piled in these commodity foods, flour, sugar, and shortening, right? And that became their diet. And these government commodities were the staples. So they made Indian fry bread and Indian tacos. There's nothing Indian about that. And these foods are so toxic. And now that's why we see 80% of them have diabetes by the time they're 30. And life expectancy in some of these communities is 46. And it's terrible. And it's not just the Native American communities, but he's internalized this food concepts that he thinks are his traditional foods. And this is true in the African American communities and Latino communities. And I think in Chicago, there's something called the Chicago Loop. If you live outside the Loop, your life expectancy is 16 years less. If you take a subway from Midtown Manhattan to the Bronx, which is a very poor African American communities, your life expectancy goes down 6 months for every subway stop. Wow. To Harlem and to the Bronx. So these things are really not talked about much. And I gave a lecture a few years ago. It was on the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination at the Harlem Riverside Church. And it was really about food oppression. And, it was a little intimidating for me because it was mostly African-American community. I'm a white Jewish guy, from New York. And what do I know about it? But it was, Governor Cuomo spoke there. I spoke, and I just was able to share what I was seeing from the science and from the data about how these communities were being affected. And it was an incredible response, and people really resonated with it. It's a very short 10-minute talk. You can find it online. Just do Hyman food oppression, you'll find it. But it sort of is really catapulted me into really trying to raise these issues, because we can't resurrect our communities unless we resurrect our health. And we can't resurrect our health unless we resurrect our food. And we can't resurrect our food until we fix the food system and fix the agriculture and sort of pull that thread that connects everything together.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm trying to do in our interview today is really understand the role of the individual and educating the individual, because I feel like if the individual is educated, then we'll start to see this real change. Tell me about, we've definitely tapped into this, but we talked a lot about how it impacts our physical health. But I know in the book you also talk about how nutrition and food can actually be medicine for our mental health.
Yeah.
And I think that this link again, I feel like what you're doing in the book is just topics that at least I can be honest and say, I'm not hearing about in a non-conspiracy theory communication. So if I hear about some of this stuff, it's always through someone who loves conspiracy theories. I don't love conspiracy theories. No. I like data and fact and discussion and change and information. And so that's what I think you do so well in this book. But let's talk to me about the connection between mental health and our diets.
Jay, it was a surprise to me. I was practicing functional medicine, working with patients. They'd come in with these physical complaints. They'd have an autoimmune disease, or they would have some digestive issues, or whatever was going on, or they'd have ADD, whatever. And I would treat them and restore their health by dealing with restoring these basic biological systems: your gut, your immune system, your detoxification system, your hormones, all the things that we do in functional medicine. And And a lot of it's using food as medicine. And then they would report back, Dr. Hyman, I don't know what happened, but my depression's gone. My panic attacks are gone. My ADD's better. My memory's better. My brain fog's gone. I'm like, what's going on here? And I began to really investigate what was happening. And I sort of jokingly call myself the accidental psychiatrist, because I was treating people's body and their brain was getting better. And I began to realize that, let's just take depression, for example. Depression turns out is an inflammatory disease, which we don't think of. It's like, it's like a sore throat, but it's in your brain. And your brain, doesn't hurt, but it can be depressed or feel sad or be anxious or have OCD or ADD or whatever. And so it has different ways of expressing that inflammation, whether it's Alzheimer's even is an inflammatory disease, autism is inflammatory. And the question is, what's driving the inflammation? And it's primarily our inflammatory processed nutrient poor diet. It's this industrial diet that's lacking the nutrients that our bodies and our brains need to function. And I just saw case after case after I started people on a whole foods diet, took out the processed food, got rid of inflammatory foods like gluten, dairy, got rid of the sugar, gave them a moment to sort of heal, and then put in the nutrients that their bodies needed. Miracles were happening. And I began to sort of go, wow, the body is so connected to the brain. And so, yes, there's a mind-body effect, but there's also a body-mind effect. And that body-mind effect is worth fixing, because you can do something about it. If you want to deal with your mental health issues, if you want to become enlightened, it's a lot easier to do it if you deal with the problems first. If your gut is healthy, if you are not low thyroid functioning, if your nutrition levels or vitamin D is good or your B12 level is good, it's much easier to actually get to what you want to do in terms of your spiritual goals or your personal goals if you are feeling good, right? It's a lot harder to get enlightened if you're mercury poisoned or you have some nasty thing going on in your body. And so this really was the genesis of this book, The Ultra Mind Solution, about how we fix our minds and our bodies by fixing our body first. It's not that we don't have to work on our minds as well, because that's your lane. but it was such an insight for me to go, wow, there's so many people suffering from mental health issues that are driven by physical issues.
No, it's 1000%. It's all interconnected. And even I find like sometimes people need their mind's help to change their body, and they need their body's help to change their mind. And I think the fixation over either or where do I start? It's almost like we need to be absorbed in all of it. Like I found that, and I can identify with what you're saying, that I was someone who focused a lot on my mind and was able to find a lot of peace and calm in my mind. But then I found that I'd neglected my body. And it was almost like real alignment in your life is felt when your body and mind are aligned, right?
Yeah.
You can't have a advanced mind and a neglected body. That's not alignment. That's going to constantly cause friction in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same with what you're saying, where if people are feeling mind fog or struggling with a mental health illness and they're not taking care of their body and, like you said, their brain, then again, you can't switch that. So I totally see the interconnectedness, and I hope more and more people listening will realize that when you read the book, Food Fix, that you'll be able to start making those tweaks that you need to in your lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, even education, we talk about in the book, and how our kids are so impaired. I mean, 1 in 10 kids has ADD. Kids have learning difficulties, dyslexia, challenges with, academic performance. And the CDC put out a report that I talk about in the book on the influence of nutrition on academic performance. And it's massive. How do kids learn when they're eating junk food and going to school in the morning with flaming hot chips and a Coke? They can't function, and then they crash. And so providing good nutrition can have radical effects on kids' academic performance and close what we call an achievement gap. And I think it also affects behavior. I think, we think about mood, but one of the things I was shocked to discover is that violence and violent behavior and aggression are also connected to our diet. And in prison studies that I talk about in the book, prisoners who are violent, who are fed a whole foods healthy diet in prison, can you reduce violent crime by 56%? And if you add a multivitamin, it goes down by 80%. If you do it in kids in juvenile detention centers, these kids, 91% reduction in bad behavior and violence, 100% reduction in suicides. I mean, it's just staggering. And if there was a pill that could do that, everybody would be taking it. There'd be a giant pharmaceutical company marketing, and we don't hear about these issues because they're not something that's going to create billions of dollars in profit. But unfortunately, it's where the real effect can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Everyone, I want to recommend that you not only go listen to the Doctor's Pharmacy podcast, but you also check out the book, Food Fix, that I have next to me right now. Again, huge recommendation for the book, to get educated, become aware of what's really happening, what's working in the background. That's going to give you enough confidence and enough of a reason and a why to go and actually make the changes in your life. It's really easy to live in ignorance and in the pain and just allow for it to continue and feel like it's only because something outside's impacting you, but actually take responsibility for our health and our futures is huge. And if not for yourself, then at least your children and the future generations. And Dr. Mark Hyman, I believe you're doing such a great service. Honestly, you really are in raising all of these issues in all areas, and the depth of the research and the lengths you've gone through to share this with us. I'm super, super grateful.
Thank you.
We end every interview with something called the final five, which are your fast five round, which is answers in one word to one sentence maximum.
Okay, all right.
And Dr. Hyman, these are your final five. So question number one, what's the best change you've made in your diet?
The best change I made was to dramatically cut out starch and sugar. I don't eliminate it, but I really don't eat any flour products. And if I eat sugar, it's usually part of some whole food, right? Maybe I'll have a, whole huge chocolate, which I love, which is, very low glycemic. And I think that and getting rid of industrial food has been the best things I've done.
I love that.
And of course, adding in all the good stuff.
Of course, super practical. Okay, great. Second question. What do you know to be absolutely true about health that a lot of people would disagree with you?
Wow, that's a good question. No one's ever asked me that, Jay. I think that the biggest thing that people don't understand is that, the way we define disease is completely wrong. So our normal conception of disease is completely flawed because it's not based on causes, it's based on symptoms. So I think people just don't understand that. And so if you focus on causes, not symptoms, and treat that, the root cause, people get better.
I love that. Great answer. All right. Third question. What gives you the biggest hope for the food industry?
I see hope because I see these food companies waking up. I see companies like General Mills and Danone and other companies and Nestle really understanding that this can't go on, that their survival depends on transforming our food system. So I see I see the culture shifting and people demanding more consciousness about their food. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome. Question number 4. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in the last 12 months?
Wow. Well, I've been traveling for 25 years and on the road, and COVID has locked me down. And I've realized that having a rhythm and stability and quiet and time to think is actually a good thing. and I think I've really learned that it's time in my life to shift how I'm doing things so I can actually cultivate more of that.
That's brilliant. And your fifth and final question is, if you could create a law that everyone in the world would have to follow, what would it be?
Ooh, a law that everyone would have to follow. Well, I think it would be a law that all governments would implement, that would influence every single policy around food, which would be quality is king. So no food policy can be made unless it's putting the quality of nutrition and nutritional density first in every single thing we do, whether it's dietary guidelines or what food we grow or what food we market or whatever it is, it's going to transform everything if we can do that.
I love that. That's beautiful. I'm actually going to ask you one more question that's just come to my mind. Do you think that it's possible to create healthy food that's affordable?
Absolutely. I mean, the studies are really clear that it may cost 50 cents more a day to eat healthier. And like I said, there are guides like Good Food on a Tight Budget that are actually incredibly effective in helping people eat well for less. It's good for them, good for the planet, and good for their wallet. And I think we get caught up in, sort of elitism about eating healthy, but this family in South Carolina, they lived on food stamps and disability for a family of 5, and they were able to do it in one of the worst food deserts in America. So it's really more about education and awareness than it is about money.
That's great to hear. Awesome. Dr. Mark Hyman, thank you so much for being a guest on Purpose. What I'd love for everyone to do is tag me and Dr. Mark Hyman on Instagram with your favorite insights, your favorite thought or idea or concept or fact that Mark Hyman stated today that stayed with you, and how you're going to experiment with your diet. I'd love for you all to think about what is that deep dive experiment you can do for the next 7 days. What could you remove from your diet or add to your diet based on the insights in the book, based on the guidance in the book that you think is going to make a massive change? Try and experiment for just 7 days for 1 week and see how your life changes. And as I said, go out and grab a copy of the book. We'll put the links in the podcast description so you can go straight to Amazon and grab your copy. Dr. Mark Hyman, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd love to share?
Nothing other than, I think, we're in this moment where everybody can focus in on their own health. And by doing that, they will literally help us get through this COVID epidemic and help solve so many of our global problems. Because what we do to ourselves, we do to our communities and our families, and what we do to ourselves, we do to the planet. And so understanding that is a circle, and that we can actually impact that by making those small changes in ourselves, I think is a very powerful message for people to understand.
Thank you so much. This was great. Thank you everyone for listening, and I'll see you again next week. Hey everyone, my name's Jay Shetty and welcome to my YouTube channel. Every week I'm sharing 3 videos that are going to help you feel more fulfilled, feel more happy, and more successful. Make sure you subscribe to this channel so that you can find out about the videos as soon as they launch. Press the like button and leave a comment, and let's keep making wisdom go viral together. Make sure you subscribe.
I was a junior in high school and couldn't read that well, a 4th grade reading level, because I would cheat on everything. And I learned how to read, I learned how to write. I taught myself all these things, all these disciplines. But whenever the first real big challenge would come, that little windstorm would push me back in the hole. And I realized, man, I'm fixing stuff on a surface level. I'm all surface, man. I'm not going deep into the cellar of my mind and fixing the foundation of my soul. My soul is broken. But I knew I could fix it, but I was afraid to go back. I was afraid to face the demons of my life, because you start lying. You want anybody knowing this shit about you. So you start lying about who you're not and start creating a person about who you want to be, but it's not who you are. So that's when I started realizing, man, I'm never going to get over the hurdle. I'm always going to live on a surface level until I go deep, deep into the sewer of my mind to figure out and face all of these different demons. That's hard. It's hard. We all like social media. We all like everybody to see us for who we want to be. That's why we post beautiful things about us. That's not going to fix you. So I realized that, and that's when I started going back. So I was about 24 years old, and I went from 175 to almost 300 pounds. And that's when I sat down on my couch and realized, we got to go back. And it started with me going back to my father. So we left when I was 8 years old. We went to a small town in Brazil, Indiana. There's about 5 to 10 black families in a town of 8,000 to 10,000 people. And there was a big hub of Klansmen that lived in Center Point, Indiana. And I talk about that in the book. So the Klan marched on the 4th of July parade in 1995 in Indiana. So when you come from a messed up foundation like I did in Buffalo, New York, where my dad beat me senseless, and now I have that messed up foundation, and now I'm here being the only black person. I call it the only in my book, being the only black person. My mom's working 3 jobs. We're living in a $7 a month place. She's never at home. So it's not like I had some mentors coming in to help me. They were trying to put me in these different group places for like having some shrink talk to me and these 8, 9 kids, and one kid setting his house on fire, another kid's peeing in the trash can, another kid had a helmet on, banging his head up against the wall. And I'm looking at this at 8 years old. And I'm gonna get back to your question that you asked me, but these are the things I had to go back and relive. I'm 24 years old now, and I have to go back to all these things that no one knew about me in this group place where I'm in this place where these people are crazy and they think I'm crazy. And I'm looking at them thinking, I'm not crazy. You just don't know where I come from. I came from a place that truly damaged my mind, damaged my soul, and now I have to go back on my own to face this shit. So, at 24 years old, I sat there a lot of times. It was like one day I woke up and said, I gotta face this. This haunting fucking voice in my head kept on saying, man, we gotta go back. The only way we can go forward is to go all the way back. And that's very scary to do for everybody.
Yeah.
But the only way you're gonna fix yourself is to go all the way back to the beginning, to your childhood, because that's where everything starts.
And that's what's blocking most of us.
All of us.
Yeah.
All of us. Everybody thinks it's, my God, like my marriage is messed up. This is messed up. You have to go back to fix all your problems. It all starts from the root, man.
The root, yeah.
The root.
I was just about to say, we have to go back to the root, because otherwise we're just dealing with the symptoms.
That's it.
Yeah.
And you cannot fix anything by giving it Motrin. You have a jacked up knee, the swelling may go down, but it's still jacked up in there. You got to get it fixed. You got to fix the knee. All those pills do, so pretty much, is just let the swelling go down. And you can live a little longer, but you're not fixing the problem. You're not fixing the problem.
And I guess the most people don't go back, or all of us, like you said, we don't go back because we don't know how.
Right.
Right? Like
Right.
most people don't know how. Like, how do you start? How do you go back? And like you said, and I love that example, that we start thinking the issue is our marriage or our relationship right now or our
Right.
job or our career. And I totally agree with you that we need to go back, but we don't know how.
Right.
Now you start talking about in the book some ways in which we can start. How?
Right.
Can you tell us about some of those?
So one big thing is the accountability mirror. You have to start with yourself. So what happened in my life was we start to get, I call it like the rucksack. A rucksack is a pack that you carry in the military, and you put all your stuff in it. Your radios, your food, your water, all that stuff you get to carry in the military. That's your rucksack. It's a backpack pretty much. As you're growing up, we all have a backpack. Most of ours, hopefully, is empty, and what we put in it is all the crap we go through in life. That's what is in the backpack for the civilians, and we carry it around with us. So what you have to start doing is realizing that no matter where you're at in life, I got called nigger a lot. My dad abused me, learning disabilities, stutters, immaturity, insecurities, self-doubt, so much crap on top of me. So much stuff. I lied a lot to create friends. So much stuff was in my backpack. No one's coming back to help me. So it starts with that person in that mirror. You have to realize you are on your own now. And whatever else you believe in, I don't care what you believe in, but on earth, it's a very lonely journey. And it starts with the accountability mirror, of looking at saying, hey, my dad who beat the hell out of me is not coming back. All these things are coming back. I have to face myself. And you have to own all those things that people may have done to you. Now it's yours. You got to own it. And it's yours now to fix the problems that people did to you. It makes no sense. It's not fair. I get it. But if you live in that woe is me mentality of, guess what? My dad did this to me. My mom did this to me. People who bullied did this to me. You're going to always live right there. You have to figure out ways to move forward because you're not coming back. And it starts with the mirror. I call it the accountability mirror in the book.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm glad you brought it up. Anyone who's watching, listening to this right now, I really want you to take this seriously, because this is like what you're talking about, what David's talking about here is exactly why all of our suffering and pain that we're currently experiencing feels so tough and hard, because unknowingly or knowingly, we are choosing to be stuck here.
Right? Exactly.
Unknowingly or knowingly, whatever situation you're in, you're choosing to stay stuck because we don't want to go and unpeel and uncover.
That's right. You don't want to break open that callus, that scar in your mind. You don't want to break, you have to break it open, let that blood flow. You have to let blood flow in your brain. You have to let all that stuff flow out. All that toxic stuff that you have trapped in there has to start flowing out now. So, like you said, you are doing this to yourself. Yes, people may have helped you get there, but it's now on you.
That's a painful truth, though.
It's a painful truth. Painful truth. Like all those people in high school and everything else, they don't know how you're going to end up. So you got to make sure that you constantly are rewriting your book. You have to constantly rewrite your book every day of your life. And these aren't just words I say. This is how I have to live. Like, these are conversations I have with myself. And I say it everywhere I go. The most important conversation when you have with yourself.
Yes.
You live with it every single day. But most of our conversations are not the right ones. They're not the ones that are going to push us to the place we need to go. They're the ones that are going to keep us sitting in that toxic environment that you've helped create and everybody else helped create, and you just live in it. You live in that muck. And that conversation just plays in your head, and that becomes you.
Decode some of that conversation that you started with yourself. Like, how does someone listening start that conversation with themselves? And what are the general transitions that you need to start seeing?
So my first conversation when I was absolutely nobody, and that's one thing you have to say. We live in a world now that's so kind. We find the kind way around everything. Like, if you don't look good, I have to find a kind way of saying, I don't like your shirt.
Right.
That's not the approach. If that's the approach you're looking for, that book is not for you. Can't Hurt Me is not for you. The approach you have to take, at least I took, you take whatever approach you want. The conversation had to be a real, honest conversation. In the accountability mirror, guess what? I was fat. Don't find a kind word to say that, you know what? I've gained some weight. No, you're fat. When I couldn't read, not like, hey, you know, you have a learning disability. No, I cannot read. I have a 4th grade reading level. I'm struggling. And sometimes I call myself stupid. Not in a way to put myself down. So don't take it like, my God, those are so hurtful. Yeah, they're hurtful. Dishonest. The conversation has to become an honest conversation of where you're at mentally. Where am I at mentally? I look like shit. I feel like shit. I'm falling behind in school. I'm lazy. My house is a mess. You have to look at what it is and call it what it is. Don't find words to make yourself feel better, because so we hang around people that make us feel better, that tell us what we want to hear, not what we need to hear. And so we stay away from those people. And we stay away from those people, like our internal dialogue becomes that kind, it's okay. It's not okay. So that's where it starts. It starts with that accountability of, it's not okay anymore. This can no longer be okay. And calling yourself out for exactly what you are and exactly how you need to fix it. That's where it starts.
I love that. I think that's awesome. I think you're so right that so many of our conversations with others are politically correct.
Exactly.
Therefore, our conversations with ourselves are politically correct, and then we continue to feed the illusion.
That's right.
Right? We continue to feed it.
Nothing gets solved by that, man. Nothing. And if you look at America right now, and I won't get off on this, nothing is getting solved because there's so much racism. There's so many things, and that's just one of them. We can't talk about anything. We are skirting all these conversations because if I say this, I'm going to offend a black person or a white person or a Jewish person or a gay or lesbian person. We skirt around the daggone problem. So we can't fix shit. Everything is like, well, if I say this on TV, I'm going to lose my damn job. We have to say it. We have to break the barriers within our minds, within the world. And it starts with yourself. It starts with yourself. You got to break the barriers down within yourself and just go there. You got to go to yourself.
Absolutely. That was the honest conversation you had then. What's an honest conversation you've been having with yourself this year? Because like you said, and I completely agree with you, it's a constant cycle, it's repetition. We have to keep doing it.
So I talk about the repetition in my book a lot.
Yeah.
Got to get the reps in. So now my conversation is this. I never set out to write a book. When I was in the dungeon and no one was coming back to help me, I just wanted that reflection in that accountability mirror that I hated so badly to be something that gave me pride, to be something that made me feel. It's not about money. It's not about success. It's not about people. Oh my God, that's David Goggins. Sign my book. No. When I started this journey out years ago, it's about, I just want to learn to read. So now I'm at a place now where I see the possibilities of human potential. What are we capable of is the conversation now. The conversation now is how can I now talk to people in a way they can understand the message that I have for so many people. So that's the new conversation now is that you are constantly evolving. You're never staying, either you're getting better or you're getting worse, you're not staying the same. So for me, I have to constantly be getting better. I have to constantly be evolving my message. So I'm constantly thinking in the quietness of my mind. That's a key point too. The world is so fast-paced. The world is so noisy. So my conversation now a lot of times is, my God, slow down. The world can take you here, be there, be everywhere, and I lose myself sometimes. So I catch myself in the airport. I catch myself in the plane while I'm writing stuff down. Okay, remember this, remember that. And I'm like, hey, hang on a second, God. What got you here? This isn't what got you here. Slow the fuck down. Go back to the quiet place of that dirty mirror in that $7 a month place you used to live in. That's where you grew. So that's what I'm constantly reminding myself of. Go back to your roots. Now, I'm not saying go back to hell, but I'm saying don't forget where you come from. As you start to explode out of the gate when you become someone, my conversation is, do not forget your roots. Do not forget your roots. Don't let this become so big that you lose yourself amongst the noise. Go back to the quietness of what made you successful. That's the conversation now. It's a constant reminder of that.
I love that, man. That's the mantra. Do not forget your roots. Repeat that again and again. And I have a meditation that I developed for myself to do that for me, that I want to share with everyone, because it aligns so closely in what you're sharing. So every morning I sit and I look at my intentions to do anything. So whether there's a new deal on the table, or there's a speaking gig that I've been invited to do, or whatever it may be. And in your life, it could be anything, whether you're starting a new business, you're writing a book, it may even just be an Instagram post for whatever it is. And I look at whatever my options are, and I ask myself, which ones of these is a seed and which ones of these is a weed? Right. Because the incredible thing in our garden is that weeds end up looking like seeds and can confuse you.
100%.
So often that thing that's giving you ego and pride and fame and control and power looks like it's amazing,
right?
But actually it's just strangling you.
100%.
So every day what I'll do is I'll look at the garden of my life and I will try and unweed my garden. So I'll look at everyone and be like, why am I doing that? And ask me that, why am I doing that? If the answer is not love, compassion, empathy, growth,
right,
personal push, sacrifice, service, if the answer is the opposite, greed, money, power, fame, if those are my reasons, right, then I have to take that weed out.
100%.
I have to pull it out, because if I don't pull it out, that weed's gonna keep growing.
Right.
And one day it's gonna be so big,
right,
that I wouldn't even have seen it.
Exactly.
And so I'm with you, man.
And that's why when I walked in here, the first thing I do is I want to know the person, because there's so many people right now doing exactly what we're doing. What turns me off so badly is I see so many people out there trying to motivate people, inspire people, help people find what's going to drive you. I see all this shit. It's all fucking a bunch of shit. And I walk in, I see it everywhere. Everybody's got this going. Everybody's got a new podcast, this about I'm going to help you find yourself. They're not living it. They're not living it, which is why I look at people, I'm like, what are you about? Are you actually doing what you say you're doing? Which is why when I heard some of your story, I realized that you have substance to what you're saying, which is why now I can speak to you. A lot of times I go on these podcasts, I don't want to fucking be there. You know, because I start realizing this person is just talking. He's not living. And we share this with people and we expect them to change. They can see right through you. They can see you're not doing this. So that's one thing about it. Don't do everything in your life for money. Don't do everything. Yes, we need it to survive. There's a great drive and passion behind doing things for the mind and the soul. There's a great drive in that. Everybody goes, man, you talk with such passion. This is a life. This is my life. So that's what I want people to get from all this stuff, man. Like, there's something inside you. The brain is the most powerful thing. The mind is the most powerful thing that we have. It's not your phone. It's not the computer. It's not anything. It's your mind. And if you can tap into that, you can come from the daggone roots of hell and become such a great seed, a powerful seed that can grow into some great daggone garden. And people don't get that. It's all up here. The power and the magic's up here.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that, man. And thank you for saying that, because for me too, that was, my desire, what I was sharing with you earlier, is changing people's relationship with perception.
Right.
And when I started, I'll become honest, when I started making videos or any of this, and I've been talking about these things and studying them for the past 13 years. And when I started making videos, which was only 2 years ago, I had no idea that anyone would care.
Right.
I made it because I wanted to share what I'd learned.
Right.
And I put it up, and I genuinely thought my life was going to be, I was going to go to my 9 to 5 job, my 9 to 9 job. I used to work 12 hours a day. in the corporate world. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make videos on the weekends.
Right.
And hopefully they'll help someone.
Exactly.
Like there was never a desire for this to be anything more than a service.
Right.
And so when I hear you say that, and also just about how much we perceive each other, and I mean how we perceive other people, etc.
Right.
It's so important for all of us to give each other the benefit of the doubt.
That's right.
And hear from each other.
Right.
To connect.
Exactly.
To see. Like I said that to you earlier. I already knew I was gonna like you.
Right.
I was hoping you were gonna like me.
I didn't know that about you. So I make sure and that's something that's very powerful. A lot of times we hear about someone else through the grapevine. And then I won't like you because I heard from somebody else that they don't like you. Always do your own judging. Always meet the person. Look at the person in the eyes before you say you don't like that person. Listen to their story. Listen to who they are. Listen to where they come from, how they lived. Get your own opinion about people. It's very huge. A lot of people didn't like me coming up because they see this hardness, this crust. Break away at the crust and see what's inside that person.
Absolutely. And don't judge a tweet.
No.
Don't judge one post.
No.
Don't judge one message.
And don't judge somebody from 30 freaking years ago. Or I say 30 fucking years ago. You know, there's so much stuff going on right now in the world. People are trying to evolve. Let them evolve.
Yes.
Let them evolve. Don't bring them back don't bring them back where they came from.
Yes.
Don't bring, if someone wants to get better, don't bring them back to where you knew them when they were a piece of shit. Let them fly. And if you feel like hell because they went away and they escaped the hell that you all once lived in, fix yourself. Fix yourself. Don't hold them accountable because they got away. Don't constantly remind them that they were once here. Fix yourself. Because a lot of people feel like crap once people start to leave their little nest, like if you're an alcoholic. And this guy says, I'm gonna stop drinking. You wanna bring them right back in. No. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, wow, this guy's doing better. Take that feeling of feeling like shit and do something about it. Change your own life.
Absolutely. Well said, man. Well said. Do you think we do that subconsciously? We don't want to see other people grow and fly because we're not growing and flying.
That's 100%. It makes us feel like shit. It's a constant reminder of where we're at in life.
If you want even more videos just like this one, make sure you subscribe and click on the boxes over here. I'm also excited to let you know that you can now get my book, Think Like a Monk, from thinklikeamonkbook.com. Check below in the description to make sure you order today.